far beyond the rolling hills, beyond the sleeping villages and rain-soaked roads, there stood a place where people did not simply listen to the rain. They listened to the stories hidden within it. Some said every raindrop carried a forgotten memory. Some believed the rain whispered fragments of journeys long past. And a few travelers claimed that if one listened carefully enough, the rain would reveal something they had been waiting to hear all along. Tonight, Elias follows a quiet road toward that distant place, a magnificent glass conservatory hidden among mist-covered valleys, a sanctuary where rainfall is treasured like music, where memories gather beneath crystal roofs, and where every gentle shower seems to carry a voice of its own. This journey is one of listening, of slowing down, of discovering the beauty hidden inside moments most people allow to pass unnoticed. Welcome back to Sleep with Stories. Settle comfortably. Allow the day to drift softly into the distance. And when you're ready, we'll step together onto the rain-soaked road ahead. Several days had passed since Elias left the house where every window glowed. Yet some places continued traveling beside a person long after they were gone. The house was one of those places, not because it had been extraordinary, though it certainly had been, not because it had been magical, though it possessed its own gentle kind of magic, but because it had reminded him of something easy to forget. That warmth often lived inside ordinary moments. The pathway leading toward the conservatory curved gently through a garden, glistening beneath the rain. Elias walked slowly, not because the journey was difficult, but because everything around him seemed to encourage a slower pace. The gardens stretched outward in every direction. Rows of silver-leafed plants shimmered beneath lantern light. Clusters of pale blue flowers gathered beside winding stone paths. Small streams wandered through the landscape, their waters reflecting warm gold and soft silver. Rain touched everything equally: leaves, petals, stone, glass. The entire valley appeared to breathe in harmony with the falling rain. Ahead, the conservatory rose gracefully from the mist. Its immense glass roofs curved toward the sky like transparent waves frozen in motion. Thousands of droplets slid across the crystal surfaces. Lantern light glowed warmly from within. The gentle musical tones continued drifting through the evening air. Each note appeared unexpectedly, a delicate chime, a distant resonance, a soft vibration carried upon the rain. Elias listened as he walked. The sounds never formed a melody he could follow, nor did they repeat themselves. Each seemed unique, born from a particular moment, a particular raindrop, a particular surface touched by water. The building was not performing music. It was simply responding to the rain. And somehow, that made the sounds even more beautiful. As the pathway approached the conservatory, the gardens became increasingly intricate. Stone bridges crossed narrow streams. Flowering vines climbed elegant arches. Small ponds reflected the glowing glass roofs overhead. Some of the ponds contained floating lanterns. Others held only rain. The surface of each pond danced endlessly beneath the falling droplets. Elias paused beside one such pond. The water reflected the conservatory's immense structure, yet the reflection shifted constantly beneath the rain. No image remained unchanged for more than a moment. The sight reminded him of memories, always recognizable, always familiar, yet never quite the same each time they were revisited. He smiled softly at the thought, then continued onward. The entrance eventually emerged from the mist, a grand set of glass doors framed by silver arches. Tall lanterns stood nearby. Their warm light illuminated rain-darkened stone. Above the entrance, delicate patterns had been etched into the glass. Flowing lines curved across the surface. At first, they appeared decorative, but upon closer inspection, Elias realized they resembled falling rain. Thousands of tiny silver markings, each unique, each following its own path. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, yet nothing about it felt extravagant, only thoughtful, as though every detail had been created with patience. The doors opened before he reached them, not through magic, nor hidden machinery. A person simply stepped forward from within and welcomed him. The figure was elderly, neither tall nor short, wrapped in a long gray coat that appeared almost as soft as the mist itself. Silver hair rested neatly upon their shoulders. Their expression carried the calm confidence of someone entirely comfortable with silence. For a moment, neither person spoke. The rain continued falling around them. Gentle notes drifted from the conservatory's glass roofs. Warm lantern light reflected upon the wet stone. Then the elderly figure smiled. A kind smile, the sort that immediately placed visitors at ease. "You arrived with the evening rain," they said softly. Their voice blended naturally with the peaceful atmosphere surrounding them, as though speaking loudly had never occurred to them. Elias returned the smile. "It seems I did." The figure nodded. "The rain often brings travelers here." They glanced upward toward the glass roofs. "And sometimes the travelers bring stories of their own." The remark carried no expectation, only quiet observation. Elias found himself liking the person immediately. There was no sense of urgency about them, no desire to impress, no attempt to explain everything at once. only calm presence. The elderly figure stepped aside. "Welcome to the conservatory of whispering rain." Warm light spilled outward from the entrance. Beyond the glass doors, countless pathways extended beneath vast crystal ceilings. Gardens flourished indoors. Lanterns glowed among trees. Streams wandered through carefully tended landscapes. And above it all, rain traced endless patterns across the glass. The gentle music continued, soft, patient, unhurried. Elias stood for a moment at the threshold, listening, watching, feeling the peaceful atmosphere settle around him. Then he stepped inside. The doors closed quietly behind him, and the sound of the rain became something entirely new. The sound of the rain changed the moment Elias stepped inside. Outside, it had been distant, a gentle companion following the road. Here, beneath the vast glass ceilings of the conservatory, it became something richer. Thousands of droplets touched thousands of surfaces. Crystal panels, glass arches, silver frames, flowing streams, hidden fountains. Every raindrop seemed to contribute its own small voice. Together, they created an endless symphony of soft sound. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, only layers upon layers of gentle rhythms, like countless peaceful conversations unfolding at once. The elderly figure walked beside him. Their footsteps were quiet upon the stone pathway. For a time, neither of them spoke. There seemed no need. The conservatory itself offered more than enough to notice. Tall trees grew beneath the glass ceilings. Their branches stretched upward toward the rain-covered arches far above. Flowering vines climbed elegant supports of silver metal. Small lanterns glowed among the leaves. Streams wandered peacefully through carefully tended gardens. Everywhere Elias looked, water appeared, not in abundance, not overwhelming, simply present, as though the entire conservatory had been built in friendship with the rain. Eventually, they reached a broad, circular garden at the center of the building. A shallow pool rested there. Its surface shimmered beneath droplets falling from an opening high above. The rain entered through carefully designed channels in the glass roof, descending gently into the pool below. Concentric circles expanded outward across the water, one after another, never ending, never repeating themselves in quite the same way. The elderly figure paused beside the pool. So, their voice carried the same calm warmth as before. You heard the whispers. It was not a question, merely an observation. Elias nodded. I heard something. The figure smiled. Most travelers do. They gazed toward the rippling water. The rain speaks differently to everyone. Elias considered this. You mean the whispers are real? The figure seemed amused by the question. That depends entirely upon what one means by real. For a moment, they watched the rain together. The circles continued spreading across the surface of the pool, appearing, growing, fading, making room for the next. The whispers are not words, the figure continued, at least not in the usual sense. They are impressions, fragments, memories carried gently through the world. Elias listened carefully. The explanation felt strangely natural, as though some part of him had already suspected it. The elderly figure knelt beside the pool. Their reflection trembled among the ripples. Rain has always been a collector of moments. They touched the surface lightly with their fingertips. It falls upon villages, forests, mountains, gardens. It taps against windows, crosses rooftops, rests upon old stone walls. It visits countless places. The ripples expanded outward, softly, patiently, and in doing so, they said, it gathers echoes, not information, not secrets, simply echoes, the feeling of a peaceful afternoon, the comfort of a familiar home, the memory of laughter shared among friends, the quiet contentment of sitting beside a window while rain falls outside. Elias found himself thinking of the glowing house he had left behind several days earlier. The warm tea, the comfortable chairs, the welcoming windows, memories he had already begun recording within his journal. The figure seemed to notice his expression. The rain often reminds us of places we cherish. Their smile returned. That is one of its gentlest gifts. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The conservatory remained peaceful around them. Lanterns glowed softly among the gardens. Water flowed through hidden channels. Rain continued its endless journey across the glass roofs overhead. Then, somewhere nearby, a delicate musical note drifted through the air. A clear crystal tone, gentle and brief. Elias glanced toward the sound. The elderly figure smiled knowingly. Come. They rose slowly. I believe it is time for you to meet the rain singers. Curiosity stirred within him once more. Not urgency, not excitement, only the quiet anticipation that accompanies the beginning of a new discovery. Together, they followed a winding pathway deeper into the conservatory, past lantern-lit gardens, past flowering trees, past streams reflecting silver light. And as they disappeared among the softly glowing pathways, the rain continued singing above them, patient as ever, steady as ever, whispering its countless stories into the night. The pathway curved gently through a quieter section of the conservatory. The farther Elias and the elderly figure traveled, the softer the surrounding sounds became. The gardens remained beautiful. The lanterns continued glowing warmly. The rain still traced delicate patterns across the glass roofs overhead. Yet everything seemed increasingly calm, as though this part of the conservatory had been designed specifically for listening. Not listening to conversations, not listening to instructions, simply listening. Listening to rain, listening to stillness, listening to the quiet spaces between sounds. The pathway eventually crossed a narrow bridge. Below, a shallow stream flowed slowly over smooth stones. Tiny lanterns floated upon the water. Their reflections drifted gently alongside them. Elias paused briefly, watching the small lights glide through the darkness beneath the bridge. Each lantern moved at its own pace, none competing, none rushing, simply following the current wherever it happened to lead. The sight felt strangely comforting. The elderly figure waited patiently, as though they understood that some places deserved a few extra moments of attention. When Elias was ready, they continued onward. Soon the pathway entered a vast circular chamber. Unlike any part of the conservatory he had seen before, the ceiling rose high above. Glass arches curved overhead like the inside of a crystal dome. Rain flowed gently across the exterior surface. Countless droplets caught the lantern light. The entire ceiling shimmered softly. At the center of the chamber stood dozens of elegant structures crafted entirely from glass. Some resembled flowers, others resembled leaves. A few appeared almost like musical instruments. Each possessed its own shape, its own curves, its own delicate design, and each responded differently to the falling rain. A droplet touched one glass petal. A clear note emerged. Another landed upon a curved crystal leaf. A lower tone followed. Elsewhere, several droplets arrived together. Their voices blended briefly before fading once more into silence. Elias stood quietly, listening. The music was unlike anything he had ever heard. Not composed, not rehearsed, not controlled. The rain created every note. The glass merely welcomed it. The elderly figure smiled. The rain singers. Elias nodded slowly. Now he understood. The music drifting throughout the valley. The gentle tones carried upon the evening air. The sounds woven among the whispers. All of it began here. The figure walked toward one of the crystal structures. Its shape resembled a flowering branch, frozen in transparent glass. Raindrops touched its delicate surfaces. Soft notes blossomed into the chamber. Every rainstorm creates different music, they explained. No two evenings are ever identical. Elias watched droplets slide along the crystal forms. Each journey appeared unique. Each note existed only once, then disappeared forever. And yet, there was no sadness in that. Only beauty. The beauty of something that never needed to last. The figure rested a hand lightly upon one of the glass branches. Many visitors believe this place was built to create music. They smiled, but that is only partly true. Elias glanced toward them. The conservatory was built to help people notice. Notice what? The figure considered the question for a moment, then looked upward toward the rain-covered ceiling. The small things, the things that happen every day, the things most people stop hearing. A gentle note drifted across the chamber, then another, then silence once more. The figure's voice remained soft. Rain falls all over the world. It always has. Yet very few people truly listen to it. Most hear only weather. Here we hear something more. Elias found himself thinking of the journal, resting safely within his satchel. The flowers beside forgotten roads, morning mist among distant trees, warm bread in a village window, tiny moments, simple moments, moments easily missed, yet somehow worth remembering. Perhaps the conservatory preserved something similar. Not objects, not treasures, but attention itself, the simple act of noticing. For several peaceful minutes, neither of them spoke. The rain singers continued their work. Droplets arrived, notes appeared, silence returned. Then the process began again, endlessly, patiently, like breathing, like waves reaching a shore, like memories arriving unexpectedly on a quiet evening. Eventually, the elderly figure smiled once more. There is one more place I would like to show you. Elias turned toward them. The figure's eyes reflected the lantern light, warm, kind, and quietly thoughtful. A place where the rain keeps its oldest songs. Together, they left the chamber of rain singers behind. The crystal notes gradually faded into the distance. The pathway curved onward through softly glowing gardens, and somewhere ahead, hidden deeper within the conservatory of whispering rain, another discovery waited patiently beneath the falling rain. The pathway led deeper into the conservatory. The farther Elias traveled, the older the gardens seemed to become. The flowering vines appeared thicker, the trees taller, the stone pathways smoother from countless years of quiet footsteps. Rain continued flowing across the crystal roofs overhead. Its familiar song accompanied every step. The elderly figure moved at an unhurried pace, as though there was no destination waiting, only the journey itself. Eventually, they arrived at a secluded section of the conservatory. The lanterns here glowed more softly. The pathways narrowed. The gardens grew quieter. Even the music of the rain singers seemed distant now. Ahead stood a circular building, crafted almost entirely from glass and silver stone. Its roof rose gently beneath the larger conservatory ceiling. Warm golden light glowed through its windows. The elderly figure stopped. This is the archive of rain songs. Elias studied the peaceful structure. It resembled neither a library nor a hall. Instead, it felt like a place designed for reflection, a place where silence was welcome. The figure opened a small glass door. Warm air drifted outward, carrying the scent of old paper, polished wood, and rain. Together they stepped inside. The room was beautiful in its simplicity. Shelves curved around the circular walls. Comfortable chairs rested beside tall windows. Small lanterns glowed from elegant stands. At the center stood a large wooden table. Upon it rested dozens of journals, some new, some ancient, some worn smooth by time. Elias approached slowly. Every journal appeared different, different colors, different sizes, different handwriting upon their covers. The elderly figure gently touched one of them. These are the rain songs. Elias glanced toward them. They don't look like songs. The figure smiled. No, most visitors say that. They opened the journal carefully. Inside were handwritten pages filled with observations, simple moments, ordinary memories, quiet experiences. A father teaching his daughter to bake bread, a fisherman watching sunrise over a silent lake, a grandmother knitting beside a window during a storm, children launching paper boats after spring rain. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic, only life, beautiful in its simplicity. Elias turned several pages. Each contained another moment, another memory, another small piece of someone's life. The elderly figure watched him quietly. Many years ago, the founders of this conservatory discovered something important. They rested a hand upon the journal. People spend much of their lives waiting for extraordinary moments. Yet, when they look back, it is often the ordinary moments they cherish most. Elias nodded slowly. The words felt familiar. They reminded him of Mira's journal, the observations he had begun collecting, the small details he had started noticing along his travels. The figure continued. These journals preserve such moments, not because they are rare, but because they are easily forgotten. Rain tapped softly against the glass roof above. Gentle, patient, steady. The room seemed to listen alongside them. For a while, Elias wandered among the shelves. Every journal contained similar treasures. A favorite chair beside a fireplace, the scent of flowers blooming after rain, the comfort of hearing loved ones laughing in another room. Thousands of moments, quiet moments, human moments, collected carefully across generations. Then Elias noticed something unexpected. One shelf remained completely empty. No journals, no labels, only polished wood waiting patiently beneath the lantern light. He paused. The elderly figure noticed. Their smile returned. That shelf is reserved. For whom? Elias asked. The figure looked toward the empty space, then toward the satchel resting across his shoulder. For future rain songs. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Elias felt the familiar weight of Mira's journal resting inside his bag. The pages he had already filled, the small moments he had begun preserving, the ordinary treasures he had started noticing. Outside, rain continued falling upon the great glass roofs of the conservatory. Inside, the empty shelf waited quietly, patiently, as though it already knew there would always be more stories worth remembering. The empty shelf remained in Elias's thoughts long after they left the archive of rain songs, not because it was mysterious, nor because it raised unanswered questions, but because it felt quietly hopeful, a space reserved for moments that had not yet happened, a place waiting patiently for future memories. As he followed the elderly figure back through the lantern-lit pathways, he found himself thinking about all the pages that had yet to be written, all the roads he had yet to walk, all the peaceful places still waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. The conservatory seemed especially quiet now. The evening had deepened. Outside, darkness rested gently across the valley. Inside, lanterns glowed with steady warmth beneath the glass roofs. Rain continued its patient journey overhead. The sound accompanied them everywhere, never demanding attention, always present. Eventually, they arrived at a small garden, unlike any Elias had seen before. It occupied a secluded corner of the conservatory, a circular space surrounded by flowering trees. Smooth stone pathways wound through beds of silver moss and pale blossoms. At the center stood a single wooden bench beneath a glass canopy. Raindrops traced soft patterns across the transparent roof above. The elderly figure paused. "This is one of my favorite places." Elias looked around. The garden possessed no grand features, no rare flowers, no remarkable fountains, no elaborate architecture. Yet it felt peaceful, wonderfully peaceful, the sort of place where a person could sit for an hour and never once feel the need to hurry elsewhere. The figure settled onto the bench. Elias joined them. For a while, they simply listened. Rain upon glass, leaves stirring softly in the distance, the gentle flow of water somewhere beyond the garden walls. The conservatory seemed to breathe around them. Slowly, comfortably, the elderly figure eventually spoke. Many visitors arrive here searching for something. Their voice remained quiet, almost blending with the rainfall itself. A secret, a lesson, an answer. Elias listened. The figure smiled faintly, and occasionally they find those things. They glanced upward toward the rain-covered canopy, but most often they discover something simpler. The rain continued falling, soft and steady. What do they discover? Elias asked. The figure's expression softened, that they do not need to be somewhere else. For a moment, Elias considered the words. The figure continued. Many people spend their lives preparing for the next moment, the next journey, the next achievement, the next season. They become so focused upon what comes later that they barely notice what is happening now. The garden remained still around them. Lantern light glowed gently among the flowers. The scent of rain lingered in the air. The elderly figure rested their hands comfortably upon their lap. The conservatory teaches a different lesson, not through instruction, not through rules, only through practice. Elias waited. The figure smiled. It teaches people how to notice where they already are. The words settled softly into the quiet, like rain sinking into thirsty soil. Elias found himself remembering recent days, the glowing windows of the house he had visited, the baker arranging bread before sunrise, the mist gathering among distant trees, the countless small observations filling the pages of his journal, none extraordinary, yet all meaningful, perhaps because he had truly noticed them. The realization brought a quiet sense of gratitude, not excitement, not revelation, only gratitude, the kind that arrives gently, without announcement, without ceremony. The two of them remained upon the bench for a long time, neither feeling any need to fill the silence. Around them, the conservatory rested peacefully beneath the evening rain. The flowers remained still. The lanterns glowed steadily. The pathways waited quietly for tomorrow's travelers. And somewhere far above, countless droplets continued their endless descent across the great glass roofs. Eventually, the elderly figure stood. The rain will continue throughout the night. They smiled, and the conservatory always becomes especially beautiful after midnight. Elias rose as well. The pathway ahead disappeared among softly glowing trees. Warm lanterns illuminated the way. The evening felt far from over. In many ways, it felt as though it were only just beginning. Together, they followed the winding path deeper into the sleeping conservatory, while above them, the rain continued whispering its patient stories into the night. The pathway beneath the flowering trees curved gently through the sleeping conservatory. As Elias and the elderly figure continued onward, the atmosphere gradually changed. Not dramatically, not suddenly, only in small ways. The lantern light became softer, the pathways quieter, the gardens more still. It felt as though the conservatory itself was settling comfortably into the deeper hours of the night. Rain continued drifting across the glass roofs overhead. Its familiar rhythm remained constant, patient, steady, comforting. The elderly figure walked without hurry. Their footsteps echoed softly along the stone pathways. Ahead, warm light glowed through another series of crystal arches. The pathway led toward a section of the conservatory, unlike any Elias had yet seen. Here, the trees grew taller. Their branches reached high toward the glass ceilings above. Some carried silver leaves that shimmered beneath the lantern light. Others displayed pale blossoms that appeared almost luminous in the darkness. Everything seemed touched by a quiet kind of moonlight, even though the sky beyond the glass remained hidden behind clouds. Eventually, they arrived at a set of elegant doors, crafted from clear crystal panels. The elderly figure rested a hand upon one of them. The midnight greenhouse. Their voice carried a hint of affection, as though introducing an old friend. The doors opened silently. Warm air drifted outward, carrying the scents of flowers, rain, and growing things. Elias stepped inside. For a moment, he simply stood still. The greenhouse was breathtaking, yet not in a grand or overwhelming way. Its beauty felt gentle, comforting, the sort of beauty that encouraged stillness rather than amazement. Hundreds of flowering plants filled the space. Some climbed elegant trellises. Others rested within stone planters. Many bloomed only at night. Their pale petals glowed softly beneath carefully placed lanterns. Tiny droplets of moisture rested upon every leaf, every blossom, every stem. The entire greenhouse sparkled quietly, as though countless stars had settled among the flowers. A narrow stream wandered through the center of the room. Its water moved so slowly that reflections remained almost perfectly clear. Lanterns floated upon its surface. Their gentle light drifted across the ceiling, creating moving patterns among the glass arches overhead. The elderly figure smiled at Elias's expression. Most visitors arrived during daylight. They began walking beside the stream. they see a beautiful greenhouse. The smile deepened slightly, but night reveals something different. Elias followed. The greenhouse felt alive in a unique way. Not active, not busy, simply awake, as though many of the plants preferred the company of moonlight and rain. Soft fragrances drifted through the air. Jasmine, night-blooming flowers, fresh greenery. The scents blended together into something peaceful and difficult to describe. Nothing seemed overpowering. Each fragrance appeared and faded gently, like memories passing through a dream. Eventually, they reached the center of the greenhouse. There, beneath a circular glass dome, stood a single tree. It was not especially large, nor particularly unusual. Its branches spread gracefully above a circular stone bench. Small white blossoms covered every limb. Rainwater gathered upon the glass dome overhead, then flowed through carefully designed channels, descending slowly around the tree like silver threads. The sight was mesmerizing. Water surrounded the tree without ever touching it directly, creating a curtain of moving droplets, a quiet waterfall made entirely of rain. Elias sat upon the circular bench. The elderly figure joined him. For a while, they simply listened. The rain, the stream, the distant sounds of the conservatory. Everything blended together perfectly. Then the figure spoke. This tree was planted by the conservatory's first caretaker. Their voice remained gentle. Many years ago, Elias looked upward toward the blossoms. The tree appeared healthy, strong, peaceful. It has witnessed countless seasons. The figure smiled. Countless storms, countless travelers. The blossoms shifted slightly as a soft breeze moved through the greenhouse. Yet every spring it blooms again. The observation seemed simple, yet the figure allowed it to linger, as though there was wisdom hidden within it. Elias watched a single blossom drift quietly downward. It landed upon the stream nearby, then floated slowly away. The elderly figure followed it with their gaze. Some things remain beautiful because they continue, they said softly, not because they stay the same. The words settled gently into the silence. Outside, rain continued falling upon the vast glass roofs of the conservatory. Inside, lantern light reflected across moving water. The blossoms swayed softly overhead, and for a time, the entire world seemed content to do nothing more than rest peacefully beneath the rain. Neither of them felt any need to speak further. The night itself seemed to provide all the company they required, so they remained beneath the flowering tree, listening, breathing, watching reflections drift slowly across the ceiling, while somewhere beyond the greenhouse, the conservatory of whispering rain continued singing its endless song into the quiet hours of the night. The pathway beyond the midnight greenhouse wound through one of the quietest sections of the conservatory. The lanterns here were fewer, the gardens more spacious, the sounds more distant. Even the rain seemed softer somehow, as though the night itself had settled into a deeper state of rest. Elias walked beside the elderly figure beneath a series of crystal arches. The glass overhead shimmered faintly with reflected lantern light. Droplets continued their patient journey across the vast ceiling, each one following its own path, each one contributing its small voice to the endless conversation of rain. After some time, they arrived at a narrow spiral staircase crafted from pale silver stone. It rose gently upward through the conservatory, not steep, not imposing, simply waiting. The elderly figure smiled. There is one place many visitors never discover. Elias followed as they began climbing. The staircase curved slowly upward, around and around, past flowering vines, past hanging lanterns, past windows overlooking sleeping gardens below. The higher they climbed, the farther the conservatory stretched beneath them. Glass roofs shimmered in every direction. Streams reflected golden light. Gardens rested peacefully beneath the rain. The entire valley seemed wrapped within a gentle dream. Eventually, they reached the top. A small doorway stood before them. The elderly figure opened it. Warm light drifted outward. Elias stepped through. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. The room beyond was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its walls were entirely glass. Its ceiling was glass. Its floor was polished crystal stone that reflected the light above. Rain flowed across the exterior surfaces of the room. Thousands upon thousands of droplets. Yet what made the room remarkable was not the rain. It was the light. Tiny points of golden light filled the air. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. They drifted lazily throughout the chamber, floating among the reflections, moving as slowly as falling feathers. At first, Elias thought they were lanterns, then fireflies, then something else entirely. The elderly figure smiled at his expression. The room where rain becomes starlight. The tiny lights continued drifting around them. Silent, peaceful, beautiful. Elias watched one float past. Its glow was soft and warm, neither bright nor dim, perfectly gentle. "What are they?" he asked. The figure approached one of the glass walls. Outside, rain continued sliding downward across the crystal surface. When raindrops travel across certain sections of the conservatory, they explained softly. They gather light. The explanation seemed wonderfully simple. As the droplets move, the light is released. Elias watched another golden point drift slowly through the room. The entire chamber resembled a night sky brought indoors, a sky made not of stars, but of rain remembering light. The thought made him smile. The elderly figure settled comfortably into a nearby chair. Several glowing lights drifted lazily around them. Visitors often come here near midnight. Their voice blended naturally with the quiet atmosphere. They sit, they listen, they watch the lights, and eventually they stop thinking about tomorrow. Elias understood immediately. The room encouraged stillness, not through instruction, not through effort, only through presence. The drifting lights, the soft rain, the endless reflections, everything invited the mind to rest. For a long while, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the golden lights float through the chamber. Outside, rain continued its endless journey across the conservatory. Inside, tiny stars wandered peacefully through the air, and somewhere between rain and starlight, the night grew even quieter. The tiny lights continued drifting through the room. Some moved alone, others traveled in loose clusters. A few lingered near the glass walls before wandering elsewhere. Their motion seemed entirely unhurried, as though time itself flowed differently within this quiet place. Elias remained seated beside the window. Outside, rain traced countless paths across the crystal surface. Inside, reflections shimmered softly across the polished floor. The room felt suspended between two worlds, the world of falling rain and the world of drifting starlight. Neither hurried toward the next moment. Both seemed content simply to exist. For a long while, silence rested comfortably between Elias and the elderly figure, the kind of silence that required no explanation, the kind that felt complete all on its own. Eventually, one of the golden lights drifted near the chair where the figure sat. They watched it fondly, as one might watch an old friend passing by. The first caretakers spent many evenings here. Their voice remained soft, almost blending with the rain itself. Elias listened. The figure smiled gently. They often spoke about the nature of rain. The golden light continued floating upward. Slowly, gracefully, most people think rain travels downward. The figure glanced toward the glass ceiling. From cloud to earth, the smile deepened slightly. But the caretakers believed rain was one of the world's great travelers. Elias considered this. The idea felt strangely fitting. The figure continued. A single drop may begin above distant mountains. It may pass through forests, flow beside villages, rest within rivers, cross wide oceans, rise once more into the sky. Outside, rain continued its patient descent. The endless cycle suddenly seemed larger than before. Older, wiser somehow. The rain is always traveling, the figure said. Yet it never appears hurried. The words settled gently into the quiet room. Elias watched another golden light drift past. The observation felt important, not because it revealed a secret, but because it reflected something true. Many journeys required movement, yet not all movement required haste. The figure folded their hands comfortably. The rain never worries about reaching tomorrow. It simply continues, one moment at a time. The room remained still around them. Golden lights drifted lazily through the air. Rain tapped softly against the glass. The entire conservatory seemed to listen. Elias thought about the roads he had traveled, the villages he had visited, the people he had met. Many of his favorite memories had occurred during moments when he was not trying to arrive anywhere. Moments when he had paused, noticed, listened. The figure seemed to sense his thoughts. The patient traveler discovers things hurried travelers miss. Their voice carried no judgment, only gentle observation, the kind that invited reflection. Elias smiled softly. The phrase felt worthy of a place within his journal. Perhaps he would write it down later. Perhaps not. Either way, he suspected he would remember it. Beyond the glass walls, the rain continued falling across the sleeping valley. The gardens rested peacefully beneath lantern light. Streams wandered through quiet pathways. The midnight greenhouse glowed softly in the distance. Every corner of the conservatory seemed touched by the same patient rhythm, the rhythm of rain, the rhythm of growing things, the rhythm of moments unfolding exactly as they should. Hours might have passed, or perhaps only minutes, within the room of drifting starlight. Time felt unusually gentle. Eventually, the elderly figure rose from their chair. The golden lights continued floating around them. The night grows deeper. Their smile remained warm. And there is one final place I would like to show you before dawn. Elias stood. Outside, rain still covered the glass roofs of the conservatory. Inside, the tiny lights continued their peaceful journey through the air. For a moment, he looked back at them. The drifting stars, the reflections, the endless rain, a place designed not to impress visitors, but to help them rest. Then he followed the elderly figure toward the doorway, leaving the room quietly behind, while countless points of golden light continued floating through the darkness. Patient as the rain, calm as the night, and content to shine without ever asking to be noticed. For a while, Elias and the elder walked without speaking. The pathways ahead seemed quieter than any he had traveled before. The rain still fell across the glass roofs high above, but its voice had softened. The steady rhythm that had accompanied him throughout the conservatory now felt distant, as though the rain itself were settling into a moment of rest. Their footsteps echoed gently along pale stone paths. Silver moss glowed faintly between the stones. Tall ferns leaned toward the glass walls. Tiny droplets rested upon every leaf, reflecting scattered fragments of lantern light. The deeper they traveled, the more spacious the conservatory became. The towering glass structures opened into vast chambers where rain drifted through the air like fine mist. Somewhere nearby, water flowed quietly through hidden channels. The sound blended with the rainfall until it became difficult to tell where one ended and the other began. Elias breathed slowly. The air carried the scent of rain-soaked earth, fresh leaves, and distant flowers. Everything felt calm, not empty, not silent, simply peaceful, as though the entire conservatory were resting between breaths. Ahead, a gentle golden glow appeared beyond a cluster of silver-leafed trees. The light was unlike the lanterns, softer, wider, almost like the first suggestion of morning. The elder noticed Elias watching it. "The observatory lies ahead," he said quietly. Elias glanced toward him. "The dawn observatory." The elder nodded. "It is the final place many travelers visit before leaving the conservatory." They continued walking. The golden light slowly grew brighter between the trees. "Why dawn?" Elias asked. The elder smiled. "Because dawn is often misunderstood." Elias waited. The old man's voice remained gentle. "Many people think dawn is important because it marks the beginning of a new day." He paused. Rain tapped softly against distant glass. But the observatory teaches something different. "What does it teach?" The elder looked toward the growing light. "That dawn is beautiful because it arrives slowly." For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The words settled gently within Elias. Beautiful because it arrives slowly. The thought felt simple, yet somehow important. Around them, the conservatory seemed filled with examples of the same lesson. Rain did not rush. Plants did not hurry. Flowers opened when they were ready. The ancient tree beneath the waterfall dome had grown for centuries without urgency. Even the drifting starlights he had witnessed earlier had moved at their own peaceful pace. Perhaps dawn belonged among them, another patient traveler. The pathway curved gently around a shallow pond. The surface reflected the glass ceiling above. Rain touched the water in delicate circles. Each ripple spread outward slowly before fading into stillness. Elias paused briefly to watch them. The elder stopped beside him. "Do you know why rain appears so often in this conservatory?" he asked. Elias considered the question. "Because rain carries memories." "Partly," the elder smiled, "but there is another reason." He looked toward the pond. "Rain reminds us that gentle things can change the world." The ripples continued spreading across the water. Small, quiet, yet capable of reaching every corner of the pond. Elias watched the circles widen. He understood, not completely, but enough. The elder seemed pleased. "You need not understand everything immediately." The old man's voice carried the same calm warmth Elias had come to know throughout the conservatory. "Some ideas are like rain." He looked toward the falling droplets. They arrived slowly. A comfortable silence followed. Eventually, they continued onward. The trees began to thin. The golden light grew stronger. And then, for the first time, Elias saw the observatory. It stood beyond a broad garden filled with pale flowers. The structure rose higher than any part of the conservatory he had yet visited. Its walls were formed from immense curved sheets of crystal clear glass. Silver arches stretched gracefully overhead. Water flowed along narrow channels woven through the architecture itself. Rain slid down the glass surfaces in shimmering streams. The entire building seemed designed to welcome both light and rain equally. Elias slowed his pace. The observatory felt peaceful, almost sacred, yet not in a grand or overwhelming way. It felt welcoming, as though travelers had been arriving here quietly for generations. Above the structure, the darkness of night had begun to change. The stars remained visible. The moon still hung beyond the glass. Yet somewhere along the distant horizon, a faint silver blue glow had appeared. The first promise of morning. Not yet dawn, only its arrival. Only the earliest hint that dawn was making its way toward the world. The elder stopped at the edge of the garden. "Here we are." Elias stood beside him. The pale flowers swayed gently beneath the rain. The observatory glowed with silver reflections. Far above, droplets traveled down vast glass ceilings. Everything seemed suspended between night and morning, between ending and beginning, between rain and light. Elias felt a quiet sense of anticipation, not the anticipation of something dramatic, not excitement, simply curiosity, the peaceful curiosity that had guided him throughout the conservatory. The elder smiled as though he recognized the feeling. "Come," he said softly. "The observatory has many windows." Rain whispered across the glass roofs overhead. The first distant light of dawn continued gathering beyond the horizon, and together they stepped forward into the garden that surrounded the dawn observatory. The garden surrounding the observatory felt different from the rest of the conservatory, not because it was brighter, not because it was larger, but because everything within it seemed to be waiting quietly for the morning. Pale flowers covered the gentle hills surrounding the building. Their petals carried tiny droplets of rain that reflected the silver blue light gathering beyond the horizon. The flowers did not glow like the lantern blossoms Elias had seen elsewhere. Their beauty was softer, more subtle, as though they belonged to the final moments of night. Elias followed the elder along a winding stone path. The observatory rose gracefully ahead. Its curved glass walls reflected both moonlight and rain. Streams of water moved through narrow channels carved into the silver stonework. The flowing water produced a quiet music, soft enough that it never disturbed the silence, only enriched it. As they approached the entrance, Elias noticed something unusual. The immense glass walls contained no visible doors. The structure appeared seamless, almost like a single crystal grown from the earth. The elder smiled. "Look carefully." Elias studied the glass. At first, he saw only reflections: rain, moonlight, the garden. Then, slowly, a section of glass became visible, a perfectly transparent doorway hidden within the larger wall. The elder stepped forward. The doorway opened without a sound. Cool air drifted outward, fresh, clean, filled with the scent of rain. Together they entered. Elias paused. The observatory was breathtaking. The interior formed a vast circular chamber beneath a soaring crystal dome. No lanterns burned inside, no candles, no magical lights, only the sky. The entire ceiling consisted of transparent glass. Above it, clouds drifted slowly across the final hours of night. Rain traced delicate paths across the dome before sliding downward in silver streams. The walls contained countless windows of different shapes and sizes. Some were round, some tall and narrow, some stretched from floor to ceiling. Each seemed positioned to capture a different view of the world outside. Moonlit gardens, rain-covered hills, distant trees, flowing streams. Every window framed a different moment, a different perspective, a different kind of beauty. For several minutes, Elias simply stood and looked. The chamber felt peaceful in a way that was difficult to describe. Nothing demanded attention. Nothing competed for it. Every view existed quietly beside the others. The elder began walking around the circular room. Elias followed, Most travelers spend their first visit looking upward, the elder said. Elias glanced toward the crystal dome. I understand why. The old man chuckled softly. So did I. Rain continued moving across the glass ceiling, high above. Its gentle patterns shifted constantly, yet never felt hurried. The elder stopped beside one of the windows. Beyond it stretched a hillside covered with silver grass. Rain drifted across the landscape like mist. Tell me what you see. Elias studied the view. A hillside. The elder nodded. What else? The rain. What else? Elias looked longer. The answer came slowly. The way the rain changes the light. The elder smiled. Yes. They stood quietly for a moment. The observatory was built for that purpose. What purpose? To help people notice. The answer was simple, yet Elias sensed it carried great meaning. The elder rested a hand lightly against the window frame. Many travelers spend their lives searching for extraordinary things. Rain drifted across the hillside beyond. They believe wonder exists only in distant places. His voice remained gentle, but often wonder is already present. The old man glanced toward the changing light. We simply moved too quickly to see it. Elias watched the rain again. This time, he noticed details he had missed before. The movement of the grass, the shifting reflections, the way every droplet seemed to catch a tiny fragment of light before continuing its journey. The hillside had not changed, only his attention had. The elder nodded, as though he understood exactly what Elias was experiencing. The observatory teaches observation. They resumed walking. Window after window revealed new views. A pond covered with floating leaves, a grove of ancient trees, a winding stream disappearing into mist. Rain touched each scene differently, creating new patterns, new reflections, new moments, yet all shared the same quiet beauty. Eventually, they reached the center of the observatory. There stood a circular platform made from pale stone. Above it, the crystal dome opened into its highest point. The sky seemed impossibly vast. The stars had begun to fade, very slowly, very gently, as though making room for something else. Elias looked toward the eastern horizon. The silver blue glow had grown brighter, not dramatically, only enough to suggest that morning was drawing closer. The elder followed his gaze. Watch carefully. Elias remained silent. The old man's voice softened further. The first light arrives long before the sun. Rain whispered overhead. The observatory rested beneath the changing sky, and for the first time since entering the conservatory, Elias found himself watching not what was present, but what was quietly arriving, the first gentle light of dawn. The elder's words settled gently into the silence. The first light arrives long before the sun. Elias remained standing beneath the crystal dome. Above him, rain continued its patient journey across the glass. Beyond the observatory walls, the horizon glowed with a soft silver blue light. The change was almost impossible to notice from one moment to the next. Yet it was happening, slowly, quietly. The night was making room for morning. For several minutes, neither Elias nor the elder spoke. There was nothing that needed to be said. The observatory seemed built for moments like this, moments when watching became enough, moments when stillness became its own kind of conversation. Eventually, the elder turned toward a narrow archway at the far side of the chamber. There is one final room. His voice remained warm and calm. The first light chamber. Elias followed him. Together, they crossed the circular observatory floor. Rain whispered softly overhead. The archway opened into a long corridor lined with clear glass panels. Water flowed gently beneath the floor. Tiny streams moved through channels carved into pale stone. The sound accompanied them like distant music. Ahead, a faint golden glow waited beyond the corridor. Not bright, not dramatic, only gentle, like the first candle being lit inside a quiet room. The elder walked slowly, as though there were no reason to hurry. Elias matched his pace. The corridor curved gradually until the observatory disappeared behind them. Soon they reached a circular doorway. Beyond it lay the final chamber. Elias stepped inside and immediately became still. The room was unlike any place he had visited in the conservatory. It was simple, beautifully simple, a circular chamber surrounded entirely by glass. No shelves, no instruments, no journals, no lanterns, only windows. The ceiling above was transparent. The walls around him were transparent. The horizon stretched endlessly in every direction. Rain moved gently across the glass surfaces. Beyond them lay gardens, streams, trees, and distant hills. Everything seemed wrapped in the soft light of approaching dawn. At the center of the room stood a single stone bench. Nothing more. The elder sat down. Elias joined him. For a while, they simply looked outward. The world beyond the glass seemed quieter than ever. The rain had become lighter. Droplets drifted slowly from the sky. The horizon continued brightening. Silver became pale gold. Blue became soft lavender. Colors blended together so gently that no boundary separated one from the next. It felt less like sunrise, more like a painting, slowly revealing itself. The elder smiled. This room was built for a very specific purpose. Elias glanced toward him. What purpose? To remind people that some of life's most beautiful moments cannot be hurried. His words blended naturally with the sound of rain. No matter how much you wish it, dawn arrives in its own time. Elias watched the horizon. The elder was right. Nothing about the morning felt rushed. The light expanded gradually across the landscape, touching one hill, then another, one tree, then another. Every change unfolded with quiet patience. The elder folded his hands. Most of the conservatory teaches visitors to listen. He looked out toward the brightening sky. This room teaches them to wait. The statement felt peaceful rather than challenging. Waiting, not as a burden, not as frustration, but as a natural part of life. The rain had waited inside clouds. Seeds waited beneath the earth. Flowers waited for their season. Morning waited beyond the night. Perhaps many good things arrived that way. Not quickly, but steadily. Elias allowed the thought to settle. Outside the chamber, a distant stream reflected the growing light. The water seemed filled with liquid silver. Birds began appearing among the trees. Their movements were calm, unhurried, as though they too understood the rhythm of the morning. The horizon brightened further. Now soft gold touched the edge of the world. The first true colors of dawn. The elder breathed quietly beside him. After a while, he spoke again. You know, many travelers believe they come here to learn something. Elias listened, but often they leave, having remembered something instead. The old man's eyes remained on the horizon. They remember that life does not need to be rushed in order to be meaningful. The room fell silent once more. Rain drifted softly across the glass. Morning continued arriving, and for the first time since entering the conservatory, Elias felt no desire to move forward, no desire to reach the next room, no curiosity about what might come next, only gratitude for where he already was. The stone bench, the rain, the growing light, the peaceful silence. For that moment, nothing more was needed, and the dawn continued, unfolding beyond the glass. For a long while, Elias remained seated beside the elder. The stone bench felt cool beneath him. Rain drifted softly across the glass walls. Beyond the chamber, dawn continued its patient arrival. Nothing seemed eager to reach the next moment. The trees stood quietly. The streams moved at their own pace. Even the clouds appeared content to wander slowly across the brightening sky. The longer Elias watched, the more details he began to notice. Small details, the kind that often escaped attention. A droplet of rain hanging from a branch before finally falling. The gentle movement of tall grass as a breeze passed through it. The way the surface of a distant pond changed color as the light slowly shifted above it. Each moment felt complete. Nothing needed to happen. Nothing needed to improve. The world simply existed. And somehow that felt beautiful. The elder eventually spoke. When I was young, I believed every journey required a destination. His voice blended softly with the rain. Elias listened. I believed wisdom waited at the end of a path. The old man smiled, and so I spent many years looking ahead. Outside the glass walls, pale gold continued spreading across the horizon. What changed? Elias asked quietly. The elder's smile deepened. I discovered that most of life happens while we are traveling. The answer settled gently within the room. The rain seemed to agree, patient, steady, present. The elder looked toward the growing dawn. We often imagine that happiness exists somewhere ahead. His voice remained calm. In the next achievement, the next destination, the next chapter, he paused. But life has a habit of unfolding where our feet already stand. Elias thought about the observatory, the journals, the greenhouse, the rain songs, the starlight chamber. Every lesson had pointed toward the same idea, not in identical words, but in spirit, presence, attention, patience, the ability to notice what already existed. Outside, the first true rays of sunlight appeared beyond the distant hills, very faint, almost transparent, golden threads woven into the morning sky. The effect was subtle, yet the entire landscape seemed to respond. Silver leaves brightened, streams shimmered, the gardens awakened beneath the growing light. Rain continued falling, now illuminated by dawn. Every droplet appeared transformed, no longer silver, now touched with gold. Elias watched in silence. The sight felt impossible to rush. The elder nodded toward the window. This is why the observatory was built. The sunlight slowly expanded, touching fields, trees, water, glass, rain. Every surface welcomed it differently. Every surface reflected it differently. Yet all belonged to the same morning. For a moment, Elias thought of the journals in the archive of rain songs. Thousands of lives, thousands of memories, different people, different paths, different stories, yet all equally valuable. Just as every surface reflected the dawn in its own way, the thought brought a quiet sense of comfort. The elder seemed pleased. As you can see, he said softly, the dawn never asks the world to become something else. Elias looked toward him. The old man's eyes reflected the growing light. It simply arrives. Rain traced gentle paths across the glass. The morning continued unfolding, and everything responded naturally. Flowers opened, streams sparkled, birds moved among the trees. No instructions were given. No effort was required. The dawn simply arrived. The world welcomed it. For a while, they sat together without speaking. The silence felt warm, comfortable, like sharing a quiet room with an old friend. Eventually, the sun rose slightly higher. The golden light entered the chamber itself. Soft beams crossed the floor. Rain droplets upon the glass scattered tiny reflections throughout the room. Golden patterns drifted slowly across the walls, across the ceiling, across the stone bench where Elias sat. The entire chamber seemed filled with moving light, not bright enough to overwhelm, only enough to create wonder. The elder watched the reflections. When the observatory was first built, travelers would come here searching for answers. His voice remained thoughtful. They often left with fewer questions. Elias smiled faintly because they found answers. The old man chuckled. Sometimes he glanced toward the drifting reflections, but more often because they discovered that not every question needed an answer. The room became quiet once more. Elias considered the idea. Outside, the rain gradually became lighter. The clouds began to thin. Morning settled gently across the conservatory. The night had completed its journey, and now a new day rested peacefully beyond the glass. The elder rose slowly from the bench. Elias stood beside him. For a few moments, they remained there together, watching the dawn, listening to the final whispers of rain, allowing the beauty of the moment to exist without interruption. The first light chamber had offered no grand revelation, no secret, no hidden treasure, only a simple reminder to notice, to wait, to be present, and perhaps that was enough. Perhaps it always had been. The morning had fully arrived, yet the conservatory still felt wrapped in quietness. The rain had softened into a delicate mist. Droplets lingered upon leaves and glass surfaces. Golden light filtered through the crystal structures overhead. Everywhere Elias looked, the world seemed refreshed, not changed, simply renewed. The elder and Elias left the first light chamber together. Their footsteps echoed softly along curved stone pathways. The observatory remained behind them, its crystal dome shining beneath the morning sky. For a while, they walked in comfortable silence. The gardens surrounding the observatory glowed with pale gold light. Flowers opened slowly beneath the warmth of dawn. Tiny streams reflected fragments of sky. Birds birdsong drifted occasionally through the conservatory, never loud, only gentle, as though the morning itself were waking gradually. Elias noticed that the elder seemed unusually peaceful. Not that he had ever appeared troubled, but now there was a softness about him, a contentment that felt connected to the arrival of morning. Eventually, the pathway curved toward a structure unlike any Elias had seen before. The building stretched across a gentle hillside. Its walls were formed almost entirely from glass. Yet instead of looking outward, every window appeared carefully angled toward the horizon. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, each facing a slightly different direction, each capturing a slightly different view. The elder smiled. The gallery of gentle horizons. Elias studied the structure. It looks different from the observatory. It serves a different purpose. They approached slowly. Morning light shimmered across the glass walls. The building appeared almost weightless, as though it had grown naturally from the landscape itself. When they entered, Elias immediately understood why it was called a gallery. The interior contained no paintings, no sculptures, no displays, only windows, rows upon rows of carefully crafted windows, each framed a different section of the distant world. One overlooked rolling hills covered in silver grass. Another framed a winding river disappearing into morning mist. Another captured a distant grove of ancient trees. Others revealed gardens, streams, valleys, and quiet pathways. Every window held a landscape. Every landscape held a different mood, yet all shared the same peaceful beauty. Elias walked slowly through the gallery. The elder followed beside him. Rain still lingered upon many of the distant surfaces. Sunlight touched them gently, creating reflections that shimmered like scattered jewels. At one window, Elias stopped. Beyond it lay a meadow stretching toward the horizon. Wildflowers swayed beneath the morning breeze. Mist drifted above the grass. The scene felt endless. The elder noticed him watching. "What do you see?" Elias considered the question. "A meadow." The old man smiled. And beyond the meadow, Elias looked again. The horizon rested in the distance, soft, unclear, beautiful. The horizon. The elder nodded. "And what lies beyond it?" Elias smiled slightly. "I cannot see." Exactly. For a few moments, they stood together. The old man's gaze remained fixed upon the distant horizon. People often fear what they cannot see. His voice remained gentle. They worry about tomorrow, the future, the unknown. Morning light brightened the meadow. The mist continued drifting peacefully. But horizons offer another way to think about uncertainty. Elias listened. The elder folded his hands behind his back. A horizon is simply an invitation. The words settled softly into the silence. An invitation, not a warning, not a problem, not something that demanded immediate answers. Only an invitation. The meadow beyond the window seemed different now, not because the view had changed, but because Elias was seeing it differently. The horizon no longer felt distant. It felt welcoming, patient, as though it would remain there whenever he was ready to continue his journey. They moved onward through the gallery. Window after window revealed new views. Some horizons glowed beneath sunlight. Others remained wrapped in mist. Some disappeared behind forests. Others stretched across open fields. No two were identical, yet each inspired the same feeling. Possibility, not urgency, not expectation, only possibility. Eventually, they reached the center of the gallery. There stood a circular platform surrounded by glass. The entire conservatory could be seen from there. Rain gardens, crystal domes, silver trees, streams, observatories, greenhouses, everything Elias had explored throughout his journey. For the first time, he saw how beautifully connected it all was. Each place flowed naturally into the next. Each lesson supported the others, like chapters within a single story. The elder rested a hand upon the railing. Many travelers believe life is a collection of separate moments. Elias looked out across the conservatory. The old man's voice remained calm, but often it is more like a landscape. Morning sunlight spread across the distant glass roofs. The path makes sense when viewed from above. Elias thought about the journey that had brought him here. The rain songs, the journals, the greenhouse, the starlight chamber, the observatory. Each experience felt connected now, part of something larger, part of a single, unfolding journey. The elder smiled quietly, as though he knew exactly what Elias was thinking. And together, they stood in the center of the gallery of gentle horizons, watching the morning settle peacefully across the conservatory below, watching the distant horizons waiting patiently beyond, not asking to be reached, only inviting wonder. After some time, Elias and the elder left the gallery of gentle horizons. The morning had grown brighter. Golden sunlight now rested comfortably across the conservatory. Rain no longer fell from the sky. Instead, droplets remained scattered throughout the gardens, upon leaves, along glass roofs, beside winding pathways, tiny reminders of the night's gentle journey. The air felt fresh, cool, filled with the scent of wet stone and blooming flowers. Their path led downward through a peaceful section of the Conservatory Elias had not yet explored. Silver trees lined the walkway. Their leaves shimmered softly whenever sunlight touched them. Small streams flowed beside the path. The water moved so quietly that it often seemed still. As they walked, Elias noticed something unusual. The elder appeared in no hurry at all, not even the calm pace he had maintained throughout their journey. Now his steps seemed slower, almost reflective, as though he too were enjoying the final hours of morning. Eventually, the pathway opened into a broad circular courtyard. At its center stood a graceful building formed from pale stone and glass. The architecture was simple, elegant, welcoming. Long windows reflected the surrounding gardens. Sunlight drifted across the walls in moving patterns. The elder smiled. The Hall of Quiet Tomorrows. Elias studied the building. The name felt different from the others. The Archive of Rain Songs, the Midnight Greenhouse, the Dawn Observatory. Each place had focused on the present moment. This name seemed to point gently toward the future. As though sensing his thoughts, the elder nodded. Many travelers ask questions about tomorrow. He began walking toward the entrance. They wonder what lies ahead. The doors opened silently before them. Inside, the hall felt warm. Natural light filled every corner. Rows of comfortable chairs rested beside enormous windows. Soft gardens surrounded the building on every side. Flowers bloomed just beyond the glass. Streams wandered through the landscape. The entire hall seemed designed for quiet reflection. There were no books, no displays, no instruments, only comfortable places to sit and look outward. Elias followed the elder toward one of the windows. Beyond it stretched a wide valley, illuminated by the morning sun. Mist drifted slowly between distant hills. The view felt peaceful, hopeful. The elder sat down. Elias joined him. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt familiar now, like an old friend. Eventually, Elias glanced around the room. What happens here? The elder smiled. People rest. Elias waited for more. The old man chuckled softly. That is the answer. The room remained quiet. No lessons. Elias asked. No ceremonies. The elder shook his head. No. A beam of sunlight crossed the floor. The gardens beyond the glass swayed gently in the breeze. Most travelers spend too much time thinking about what comes next. His voice remained calm. The Hall of Quiet Tomorrows reminds them that the future does not require constant attention. Elias looked out toward the valley. The horizon stretched peacefully into the distance. People often believe they must solve tomorrow before it arrives. The elder smiled, but tomorrow is very capable of arriving on its own. The statement made Elias smile, simple, yet somehow comforting. Outside, sunlight sparkled across a distant stream. Birds drifted between the trees. Nothing appeared concerned about the future. The flowers simply bloomed. The water simply flowed. The morning simply unfolded. Perhaps life contained more trust than most people realized. The elder seemed to sense the thought. When a gardener plants a seed, they do not dig it up every morning to check its progress. His eyes reflected the sunlight beyond the glass. They water it, they care for it, and then they allow it to grow. The room became quiet once more. Elias thought about the journeys he had taken, the places he had explored, the questions he still carried. Not every answer needed to arrive immediately. Not every future needed to be planned perfectly. Some things simply required patience, the same patience he had witnessed in the rain, in the flowers, in the dawn. Outside, the valley glowed beneath the growing sun. The mist slowly lifted from the hills, revealing landscapes that had been hidden moments before. No effort had been required. The morning had revealed them naturally. The elder smiled. That is often how life works. Elias followed his gaze. The distant hills appeared clearer now, yet they remained beautiful before. And after the mist had lifted, the realization brought a quiet sense of peace. For a long while, they sat together beside the window, listening to the streams, watching the gardens, allowing the morning to continue its gentle journey. And within the hall of quiet tomorrows, the future no longer felt like something waiting ahead. It felt like a path already unfolding beneath the sunlight. The morning continued unfolding gently across the conservatory. Sunlight rested upon the glass roofs. The gardens shimmered with lingering droplets of rain. Every pathway seemed touched by both the memory of the night and the promise of the day ahead. After spending a long while in the hall of quiet tomorrows, Elias and the elder resumed their walk. Neither seemed eager to arrive anywhere. The journey itself felt enough. Their path wound through peaceful gardens where white flowers bloomed beneath silver trees. Small streams crossed beneath graceful stone bridges. The water reflected fragments of sky between drifting leaves. The conservatory felt different now, not because it had changed, but because Elias had changed. The places around him felt familiar, connected, as though each chamber had quietly prepared him to notice the next. Ahead, a gentle glow appeared among the gardens, warm and golden, unlike the bright sunlight of morning. This light seemed softer, intimate, almost like the glow of a lantern remembered from childhood. The elder smiled when he noticed Elias looking toward it. Our next stop, they followed the winding path. The glow gradually grew brighter. Soon a circular pavilion appeared among the trees. Its roof was formed from pale glass. Its walls remained entirely open to the surrounding gardens. Golden light filled the structure, yet Elias could not immediately tell where the light originated. The pavilion itself seemed to glow, as though sunlight and memory had somehow become one. The pavilion of returning light, the elder said quietly. They stepped inside. The air felt warm, comfortable, gentle. The pavilion contained only a few stone benches arranged around a circular floor. At the center stood a shallow pool of perfectly still water. Golden reflections drifted across its surface. Elias looked down. For a moment, he thought he saw sunlight. Then he realized the reflections seemed different, softer, warmer, almost familiar. The elder sat beside the pool. Elias joined him. For a while, they watched the reflections move slowly across the water. Then Elias noticed something unusual. The reflections carried impressions, not complete images, not clear scenes, only brief suggestions. A warm window glowing at dusk, a garden gate opening on a summer morning, a favorite chair beside a fireplace, a quiet path beneath autumn leaves. The images appeared for only a moment before fading gently away. New ones followed, equally simple, equally ordinary, yet somehow deeply comforting. Elias watched quietly. The elder smiled. Do they seem familiar? A little. The old man nodded. Most people say the same. The reflections continued drifting across the water. These are not specific memories. The elder's voice remained soft. They are echoes of familiar comforts. Elias looked again. A steaming cup resting beside a rain-covered window. A blanket folded across a chair. A lantern glowing in the evening. Simple things, small things, yet each carried a feeling of home. The elder folded his hands. People often remember major events. His eyes reflected the golden water, but the heart frequently treasures smaller moments. Outside the pavilion, a breeze moved through the flowers. Sunlight danced among the leaves. The feeling of safety, the sound of familiar footsteps, the warmth of a room at the end of a long day. The reflections shifted once more. A doorway illuminated by welcoming light. A garden path returning home. A quiet library beneath evening lanterns. Elias felt a calm sense of recognition, not because he had experienced those exact moments, but because the feelings were universal, comfort, belonging, peace. The elder smiled. The pavilion was built to honor those feelings. For a long while, they sat together beside the pool, watching the gentle reflections, listening to the distant sounds of water and birdsong. The golden light never grew brighter, never faded. It simply remained steady, comforting, like a memory that asks nothing from you except to be appreciated. Eventually, Elias noticed something else. The reflections never lingered for long. Each one arrived, rested briefly upon the water, then drifted away. The elder seemed unsurprised by the observation. Comfort does not come from holding onto moments forever. He looked toward the pool. It comes from knowing they existed. The words settled gently into the silence. Outside, sunlight continued spreading across the gardens. Flowers opened toward the morning sky. Streams carried silver reflections through the landscape. Everything moved naturally. Nothing remained exactly the same. Yet beauty continued appearing, again and again, in new forms. The elder rose slowly from his seat. Elias stood beside him. The pool remained calm. Golden reflections continued drifting across its surface. The pavilion seemed content to remain there among the gardens, offering comfort to whoever might visit. As they turned toward the pathway beyond, Elias glanced back one final time. The golden light still shimmered softly across the water, a reminder that life's most treasured moments were often the quietest ones, and that perhaps they never truly disappeared. They simply became part of the light we carried forward. Beyond the pavilion of returning light, the conservatory seemed brighter than ever. Morning sunlight flowed through the great glass ceilings overhead. The gardens shimmered softly beneath its warmth. Every leaf carried tiny reflections. Every stream sparkled like liquid crystal. Elias and the elder continued along a winding pathway bordered by white flowers. Their footsteps remained unhurried. The air felt peaceful, fresh from the rain, filled with the scent of blooming plants and warm stone. For a long while, they walked without speaking. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt familiar, comfortable, like sitting beside a quiet fire. Ahead, the conservatory opened into one of the largest spaces Elias had yet encountered. A vast glass atrium rose before them. Its ceiling stretched high into the morning sky. Silver arches crossed overhead like graceful branches. Sunlight poured through every pane. The entire structure seemed filled with light. Not dazzling light, gentle light, the kind that invites you to linger. The elder smiled. The atrium of unwritten days. Elias studied the enormous space. The name stirred something within him. unwritten days, not forgotten days, not remembered days, days that had not yet arrived. Together they stepped inside. The atrium was beautiful in its simplicity. Long pathways curved through gardens of pale flowers. Small fountains flowed quietly between clusters of trees. Sunlight drifted across the floor in slow-moving patterns. Yet what caught Elias's attention most were the countless sheets of glass suspended throughout the chamber. They floated gently in the air, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, each perfectly clear, each empty. The glass panels drifted slowly above the gardens, like transparent pages waiting to be written. Elias looked upward. The floating panels reflected fragments of sunlight. Soft golden patterns moved across the walls, across the flowers, across the pathways. The elder noticed his curiosity. What do they remind you of? Elias considered the question. Pages. The old man nodded. That is exactly what they represent. For a moment, neither spoke. The floating glass pages continued drifting overhead. Some moved slowly through beams of sunlight. Others reflected the gardens below. Everyone remained empty. The elder folded his hands behind his back. Many travelers arrive here, carrying concerns about the future. His voice echoed softly through the vast chamber. They imagine tomorrow already written. Elias listened. They worry about outcomes, mistakes, possibilities. The floating pages shimmered above them. But the future is rarely as fixed as we imagine. The old man gestured toward the empty glass. Most days arrive unwritten. Elias looked upward once more. The pages seemed peaceful, not incomplete, not lacking, simply waiting. The realization brought a surprising sense of relief. Outside the atrium walls, gardens stretched toward the morning horizon. Sunlight touched the flowers. Streams wandered through the landscape. Nothing appeared concerned about what might happen next. Everything simply continued growing. The elder smiled. When people look at an empty page, they often feel pressure. His eyes reflected the floating glass. But an unwritten page is also freedom. The words settled gently into the silence. Freedom. Not uncertainty, not fear, freedom. The floating pages drifted slowly overhead. Their empty surfaces reflected the changing morning light. Each one held endless possibilities, yet none demanded immediate answers. Elias found himself relaxing further. The future no longer felt like something waiting to be solved. It felt like open space, a landscape still unfolding, a story still being written. The elder led him deeper into the atrium. The pathways wound between gardens, filled with white blossoms. fountains whispered quietly among the trees. Sunlight continued moving across the floor. Everything seemed calm, patient, welcoming. Eventually, they arrived at the center of the chamber. There stood a circular platform, surrounded by floating pages. From there, the entire atrium could be seen. Glass above, gardens below, light everywhere. The elder rested his hand upon the railing. Do you know why these pages remain empty? Elias shook his head. The old man smiled. Because they belong to tomorrow. The answer felt perfect, simple, complete. The pages needed nothing else. Not predictions, not instructions, not certainty, only space for growth, for change, for discovery, for whatever might arrive. A gentle breeze moved through the atrium. The floating pages shifted slightly. Sunlight danced across their surfaces. For a moment, the entire chamber seemed alive with light. Not dramatic, not magical in the usual sense, only beautiful, the kind of beauty found in possibility, the kind of beauty found in beginnings. Elias watched quietly, and for the first time in a long while, tomorrow felt less like a destination and more like an invitation. When they finally left the atrium of unwritten days, the conservatory seemed quieter than before. Not because the sounds had faded. The streams still flowed. The fountains still whispered. Birdsong still drifted through the gardens. Yet something within Elias had grown calmer. The lessons of the conservatory no longer felt like separate discoveries. They felt connected, like gentle threads woven into a single tapestry. The morning sun continued its slow climb across the sky. Golden light flowed through the glass ceilings overhead. Every surface seemed warmed by its presence. The pathway ahead curved through a section of the conservatory Elias had not yet visited. Tall silver trees lined the route. Their branches stretched gracefully above the stone walkway. Small flowering vines climbed ancient walls. Droplets of water shimmered among their leaves. The air carried the scent of earth after rain. Fresh, comforting, alive. For a while, neither Elias nor the elder spoke. The silence felt natural, like part of the journey itself. Eventually, the pathway opened into a vast garden, unlike any Elias had seen before. He stopped. The sight before him was breathtaking. The garden appeared divided into 4 great sections. Each represented a different season, and somehow all 4 existed together. Spring bloomed on one side of the garden. Delicate flowers covered rolling hills. Cherry blossoms drifted through the air. Fresh green leaves shimmered in the sunlight. Nearby, summer flourished. Golden fields swayed beneath warm light. winding streams. Butterflies drifted lazily through the air. Beyond that lay autumn. Amber leaves glowed among ancient trees. Golden pathways disappeared into peaceful groves. The light itself seemed softer there. And finally, winter. Not harsh, not cold, only peaceful. Snow rested gently upon silver branches. Frost sparkled beneath the sunlight. The landscape seemed wrapped in quiet stillness. The elders smiled. The garden of patient seasons. Elias gazed across the extraordinary landscape. All 4 seasons existed together, none competing with the others, none appearing more important, each beautiful in its own way, each belonging exactly where it was. Together they entered the garden. Stone pathways connected the 4 sections. Flowers gradually became fields. Fields gradually became forests. Forests gradually became snowy groves. The transitions felt seamless, natural, as though time itself flowed gently through the landscape. They walked first through spring. Fresh blossoms surrounded them. New leaves shimmered overhead. Everything seemed filled with quiet beginnings. The elder ran his hand lightly across a flowering branch. People often wish to remain in spring. Elias looked around. It was easy to understand why. Everything felt hopeful, full of possibility. The old man smiled. But a garden cannot remain in spring forever. They continued walking. Soon they entered summer. Warm sunlight filled the air. Fields of flowers stretched toward the horizon. Streams reflected the bright sky above. Life seemed abundant, comfortable, complete. The elder glanced toward the fields. Others wished to remain here. Elias understood. Summer carried a feeling of fulfillment, of growth fully realized. Yet the pathway continued onward. Gradually, the flowers changed. The light softened. Golden leaves appeared. They entered autumn. Amber trees surrounded them. Leaves drifted slowly across the path. The air carried a peaceful stillness, not sadness, reflection, the beauty of things gently changing. The elder paused beneath an ancient tree. Many people fear autumn. A leaf drifted past them. But autumn is simply a season of transformation. Sunlight filtered through the golden canopy overhead. The garden felt calm, wise, comforting. Nothing appeared lost, only changing. Together they continued onward. Soon the trees grew silver. The ground became covered with sparkling frost. Winter welcomed them quietly. Snow rested upon branches. The air felt still, peaceful. The entire landscape seemed to breathe more slowly. The elders smiled. And then comes winter. Elias looked across the snowy grove. The scene felt beautiful, not empty. not lonely, simply resting. The old man nodded toward the snow-covered trees. Most people misunderstand winter. His voice remained gentle. They believe nothing happens here. Sunlight sparkled across the frost, but much is happening. The roots below remained alive. The seeds beneath the earth remained alive. The garden rested, prepared, waited, not because growth had ended, but because growth sometimes requires stillness. The words settled softly within Elias. He looked across the 4 seasons surrounding them: spring, summer, autumn, winter. Each carried its own beauty, its own purpose, its own rhythm. None needed to arrive early. None needed to stay forever. The entire garden existed because all 4 belonged. The elder smiled. Life is much the same. For a long while, they stood together at the center of the garden, watching blossoms drift, watching leaves fall, watching snow sparkle, watching sunlight dance across every season. And perhaps for the first time, Elias understood that growth was not a straight path. It was a cycle, a rhythm, a patient unfolding, just like the rain, just like the dawn, just like the seasons themselves. The garden of patient seasons remained behind them. Yet its quiet lesson seemed to follow Elias as he walked. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, each season moving in its own time, each arriving exactly when it should. The thought lingered gently in his mind as he followed the elder along another winding pathway. The morning had become warm now. Sunlight streamed through the towering glass ceilings of the conservatory. Silver beams crossed the gardens. Streams sparkled beside the stone paths. Everywhere, life seemed to move with calm purpose. Nothing rushed, nothing delayed. Everything unfolded naturally. The pathway gradually descended into a peaceful valley, hidden deep within the conservatory. Tall trees surrounded the area. Their leaves filtered the sunlight into soft golden patterns. Flowering vines climbed ancient stone walls. Birdsong drifted occasionally through the air. Ahead, Elias heard the faint sound of flowing water, not the movement of a stream. Something larger, steadier. The elder smiled. Our next destination. They followed the sound. Soon the trees opened around them, and Elias stopped. At the center of the valley stood a magnificent fountain. It rose from a circular pool of white stone. Graceful arches carried streams of water through the air. Crystal channels guided the flowing water from one level to the next. Sunlight danced across every surface. The fountain seemed endlessly alive, yet completely peaceful. The fountain of unhurried time, the elder said softly. Elias gazed at the flowing water. Unlike many fountains, This one contained no dramatic displays, no towering jets, no powerful cascades. Instead, the water moved gently, patiently. Every stream seemed carefully designed to slow its journey. The effect was strangely calming. Together, they approached the fountain. Stone benches surrounded the circular pool. Flower gardens bloomed nearby. The air felt cool beside the flowing water. Elias sat down. The elder joined him. For several moments, they simply listened. Water moving through stone channels, birds singing among distant trees, leaves shifting in the breeze. The sounds blended together naturally, like parts of a single melody. Eventually, Elias spoke. The water moves slowly. The elder smiled. Yes. Was it designed that way? The old man nodded. Very much so. Sunlight shimmered across the pool. The water continued its gentle journey. The builders wished to create a fountain that never hurried. Elias watched the flowing streams. The idea seemed unusual. Most fountains celebrated movement, power, energy. This one celebrated patience. The elder rested his hands upon his lap. Every drop eventually reaches the pool. His voice remained calm. There is no need for it to rush. The water seemed to illustrate his words perfectly. Each stream followed its path. Each curve, each channel, each small waterfall. Nothing arrived late. Nothing arrived early. Everything simply flowed. The elder glanced toward the moving water. People often treat time differently. Elias listened. They hurry through mornings. They hurry through afternoons. They hurry through entire years. The fountain continued flowing peacefully beside them, as though reaching the future faster will somehow improve the journey. A faint smile touched his face. But time was never meant to be conquered. The words settled softly into the air. Above them, sunlight filtered through the leaves. Golden reflections danced across the surface of the pool. The elder looked toward the fountain. Water understands something many people forget. Elias followed his gaze. The old man smiled. It arrives by continuing, not by rushing, not by forcing, simply by continuing. The idea felt wonderfully simple. Outside the conservatory, rivers reached the sea. Seeds became trees. Morning became afternoon, not through urgency, but through steady progress. The fountain seemed built to honor that truth. For a long while, they sat together, watching the water, listening to its gentle rhythm, allowing its lesson to unfold naturally. Eventually, Elias noticed something else. No two streams followed identical paths. Some curved around stone pillars. Others crossed small bridges. Some moved through shaded channels. Others sparkled beneath direct sunlight, yet every drop belonged to the same fountain. The elder seemed pleased when Elias mentioned the observation. Exactly. His eyes reflected the moving water. Every journey looks different. The fountain continued flowing. Patient, steady, beautiful. No path is required to resemble another. Sunlight shimmered across the pool. The water remained unconcerned with comparison. Each stream simply followed its own course. The realization brought a quiet sense of comfort. The elder rose slowly from the bench. Elias stood beside him. Together they walked around the fountain's edge. The water accompanied them wherever they went, always moving, always peaceful, never hurried. At the far side of the valley, they paused one final time. The fountain remained visible between the trees. Its silver streams sparkled beneath the sunlight, a living reminder that life's most meaningful journeys did not require speed, only patience, only presence, only the willingness to keep moving forward, one gentle step at a time. The fountain of unhurried time gradually disappeared behind the trees. Its gentle music remained audible for a little while. Then even that faded into the peaceful sounds of the conservatory. Elias and the elder continued walking. The pathway ahead climbed gradually upward. Stone steps curved between flowering gardens. Silver vines draped gracefully across glass arches overhead. Sunlight filtered through leaves that still carried traces of morning rain. The air felt lighter now, warmer, as though the conservatory itself had entered a new part of the day. Neither traveler spoke. The silence felt natural. After so many discoveries, words seemed less necessary. The gardens offered their own conversations. The streams offered their own wisdom, and the sunlight itself seemed content to tell its story quietly. As they climbed higher, Elias noticed something unusual. The sound of water was becoming more distant. The scent of rain was becoming softer. For the first time since entering the conservatory, he felt as though he were leaving the rain behind. Not completely. Its presence remained everywhere. Within the gardens, within the streams, within the flowers that had grown beneath its care. Yet the rain itself no longer surrounded them. The elder seemed aware of the change. He smiled gently. "You noticed?" Elias nodded. "The rain feels farther away." "It does." The old man's eyes reflected the sunlight. "That is why we are going here." The pathway continued upward. Soon they reached a high terrace, overlooking much of the conservatory below. Elias stopped. The view was breathtaking. Glass domes shimmered across the landscape. Silver gardens stretched between winding streams. Crystal walkways connected distant structures. The observatory gleamed beneath the morning sky. The greenhouse rested among flowering hills. The valleys and gardens they had explored appeared scattered across the landscape, like pieces of a beautiful memory. The entire conservatory seemed visible from here. The elder smiled. The terrace beyond the rain. A soft breeze crossed the open space. Unlike the sheltered chambers below, this place felt open to the sky. Bright, spacious, peaceful. Stone benches lined the edge of the terrace. Flowering vines climbed graceful pillars. Sunlight rested warmly upon the pale stone floor. Together they approached the overlook. For several moments, they simply admired the view. The elder eventually spoke. Many travelers spend their lives standing in the rain. His voice remained calm. They move from one storm to another. Elias listened quietly. The old man gestured toward the gardens below. Yet even rain has seasons. The sunlight brightened around them, and eventually every storm becomes part of the landscape. Elias looked across the conservatory. The rain he had encountered throughout his journey was no longer falling, yet its influence remained everywhere. The streams, the flowers, the gardens, the great trees, everything had been shaped by it. Everything had grown because of it. The elder smiled. That is true of many experiences. His gaze rested upon the horizon. Moments pass, years pass, journeys pass. The breeze moved gently through the flowering vines, but what they leave behind often remains. Elias considered the thought. Below them, sunlight danced across the glass roofs. The conservatory seemed both familiar and new, not because it had changed, but because he could finally see it as a whole. The elder rested his hands upon the stone railing. When you stand inside a garden, you notice individual flowers. His voice blended with the breeze. When you stand above it, you notice the design. The words settled softly within Elias. From this height, every place they had visited felt connected. Nothing had been random. Every chamber, every pathway, every lesson, each had quietly prepared him for the next. The rain songs, the journals, the greenhouse, the observatory, the seasons, the fountain, all belonged to the same journey. The elder smiled, as life often does. For a while, they remained silent. The sunlight continued warming the terrace. Birds drifted through the bright sky. Far below, streams reflected silver ribbons of light. The conservatory appeared peaceful, complete, at ease with itself. Eventually, Elias noticed something on the far horizon. Beyond the conservatory, beyond the distant hills, a vast landscape stretched outward beneath the morning sky, the world beyond. The elder followed his gaze. There will always be more horizons. His voice carried no urgency, only warmth. More journeys, more discoveries, more mornings. The distant landscape shimmered beneath the sunlight. Beautiful, uncertain, welcoming. The elder smiled gently, and that is a good thing. For a long while, they stood together upon the terrace beyond the rain, watching sunlight settle across the conservatory below, watching distant horizons glow beyond it. And for perhaps the first time, Elias understood that a journey did not become meaningful when it ended. It became meaningful because he had been present for it. One step, one moment, one quiet discovery at a time. The terrace beyond the rain remained behind them, yet its view lingered within Elias's thoughts. The conservatory spread below like a living tapestry, every garden connected, every pathway meaningful, every discovery part of a larger whole. For a long while, he carried that feeling with him as he followed the elder along a narrow stone path leading away from the terrace. The morning had become wonderfully calm. The bright gold of early dawn had softened. Sunlight now rested comfortably across the glass roofs and flowering valleys below. The air felt warm, peaceful, filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Birdsong drifted occasionally through the gardens. A gentle breeze moved among the trees. Everything seemed content simply to exist. The pathway gradually left the grand sections of the conservatory behind. The towering glass structures became less frequent. The wide gardens grew smaller, more personal, more intimate. Eventually, they entered a quiet corner of the conservatory Elias had never noticed before. Tall hedges surrounded the area. Silver flowering vines climbed low stone walls. A narrow wooden gate stood beneath an archway covered with white blossoms. The elder paused. A gentle smile appeared upon his face. For a moment, he looked not like a guide, not like a keeper, simply like an old man arriving somewhere he loved. The final garden, he said softly. Elias noticed something in his voice. Affection, warmth, memory. The elder opened the gate. Together they stepped inside. The garden beyond was surprisingly simple. No crystal domes, no grand fountains, no extraordinary displays. Only a small, peaceful garden enclosed by flowering hedges. Stone paths wound through beds of white and silver flowers. A tiny stream crossed beneath a wooden bridge. A few fruit trees offered shade beneath the sunlight. Butterflies drifted lazily through the air. Everything felt humble, gentle, beautiful. Elias looked around quietly. The elder smiled. "This is my garden." For a moment, neither spoke. The words seemed to settle naturally among the flowers. The old man walked slowly along the pathway. His hand brushed lightly across the leaves as he passed. Elias followed. The garden carried a feeling unlike any other place they had visited, not because it was grand, because it was personal. Every flower appeared carefully chosen, every path thoughtfully placed, every tree lovingly tended. Eventually, they reached a wooden bench beside the stream. The elder sat down. Sunlight filtered through the branches overhead. Silver reflections danced upon the water. For a while, they simply listened. The stream, the birds, the breeze, the sounds blended together into a peaceful harmony. At last, Elias spoke. "You built this?" The elder nodded. "Many years ago." His eyes rested upon the flowers nearby. When the conservatory was still young, Elias looked around. The garden felt timeless, as though it had always existed. The elder smiled. It began with only a few plants. His voice carried quiet amusement. A very small stream, and far too much empty space. The old man chuckled softly. Elias smiled. The image was easy to imagine. The elder continued, watching the flowers. Most beautiful things begin very modestly. The sunlight shimmered upon the water. Gardens, friendships, dreams. The breeze moved through the branches overhead. Even wisdom. The words felt familiar, connected to many of the lessons Elias had encountered throughout the conservatory. The elder seemed aware of that. He nodded slightly. The conservatory often teaches the same truths. His smile deepened. It simply teaches them in different ways. They sat quietly together. The garden seemed completely at peace. No part of it sought attention. No part of it tried to impress. Yet it felt more meaningful than many grand places, because it reflected the person who had cared for it. Eventually, Elias noticed a small flowering tree growing beside the stream. Its blossoms shimmered with silver and gold light, unlike the others around it. The elder followed his gaze. That tree arrived as a seed. His voice softened. "I nearly overlooked it." The old man smiled. It seemed insignificant. Sunlight drifted across the blossoms, but year after year, it continued growing. The tree stood quietly beside the water, strong, graceful, patient. The elder looked toward it with affection. Many things reveal their beauty slowly. The statement settled gently into the silence. Elias found himself thinking about rain and seasons and unwritten days and all the lessons of the conservatory. Perhaps they shared the same message: patience, presence, trust. the willingness to allow life to unfold naturally. The elder seemed content with the thought. For a long while, they remained beside the stream, watching sunlight move across the garden, watching butterflies drift among the flowers, listening to water flow beneath the little bridge. The entire garden felt like a reflection of its keeper, gentle, patient, kind. And as the morning continued unfolding around them, Elias realized that some of the most meaningful places were not the grandest. They were simply the places where care had quietly lived for a very long time. The little garden remained peaceful around them. Sunlight drifted slowly across the flowers. The stream continued its quiet journey beneath the wooden bridge. Butterflies wandered lazily through the warm morning air. For a long while, neither Elias nor the elder spoke. There seemed no need. Some moments became richer when allowed to remain undisturbed. Eventually, the elder rose from the bench. His movements were unhurried, comfortable, as though he had learned long ago that nothing meaningful was ever improved by rushing. Elias stood as well. Together, they followed the winding path through the garden one final time, past the silver blossoms, past the fruit trees, past the small stream that had quietly accompanied their conversation. The elder paused beside the flowering tree they had admired earlier. Sunlight shimmered among its silver and gold blossoms. For a moment, he simply looked at it, not as a gardener examining his work, but as an old friend greeting another. Then he smiled softly and continued onward. The gate stood open ahead. Beyond it, the wider conservatory waited beneath the gentle light of morning. As they stepped through the archway, Elias found himself looking back. The little garden seemed unchanged, peaceful, patient, content to continue blooming, whether anyone was watching or not. The sight filled him with a quiet gratitude. The elder noticed, "It will still be here." His voice carried the warmth of reassurance. "Tomorrow, and the day after, and long after we are gone." Elias nodded. The thought felt comforting rather than sad. Some places endured, not because they resisted time, but because they welcomed each season as it arrived. Together, they walked through the conservatory. The great glass roofs sparkled beneath the sunlight. Streams reflected gold and silver patterns across the pathways. The gardens glowed with fresh color after the long rain. Everywhere Elias looked, he saw echoes of the journey he had taken. The rain singers, the archive of rain songs, the midnight greenhouse, the room where rain became starlight, the terrace above the valley, and now the keeper's own garden. Each place had offered something different, yet all seemed connected by the same gentle thread. Notice what is here. Treasure what is simple. Allow life to unfold at its own pace. Eventually, they arrived once more at the great entrance of the conservatory. The glass doors stood open. Beyond them, the road stretched peacefully through the valley. Sunlight rested upon the distant hills. The rain clouds had drifted away, leaving only clear skies and fresh morning air. The elder stopped beside the entrance. His familiar smile returned. Neither seemed eager to hurry the farewell. For a moment, they simply stood together, listening to the soft sounds of the conservatory behind them, the rustling leaves, the flowing water, the distant songs of birds beginning their day. Then the elder spoke. Every traveler leaves with something different. His eyes reflected the sunlight. Some remember the music. Some remember the gardens. Some remember the rain. The smile deepened slightly, and some discover that the things they were searching for had been quietly beside them all along. The words settled gently between them. Elias thought of warm windows, quiet roads, shared conversations, morning mist, lantern light, the countless small moments that filled a life. Perhaps those moments had always been treasures. They simply required someone willing to notice them. The elder nodded as though understanding. Then he extended a hand. Elias accepted it. The gesture was simple, yet carried the warmth of genuine friendship. Safe travels, Elias. Thank you, Elias replied softly. The elder's smile remained. The road will always know the way forward. With that, Elias adjusted the strap of his satchel. Inside rested his journal. Its pages now held far more than observations. They held reminders, lessons, memories, and a deeper appreciation for the ordinary wonders that surrounded every day. He stepped beyond the doors. The road welcomed him once again. The conservatory remained behind him. Yet somehow it no longer felt distant. Its lessons seemed woven into the journey ahead. After several steps, Elias paused. He looked back one final time. Morning sunlight shimmered across the great glass roofs. The conservatory glowed softly within the valley, peaceful as ever, patient as ever, a place where rain was listened to as carefully as music. Then, with a quiet smile, Elias continued down the road. The valley gradually opened before him. New journeys waited somewhere beyond the horizon. New stories, new discoveries, and countless small moments still waiting to be noticed. Behind him, the conservatory of whispering rain rested peacefully beneath the morning sky. Ahead, the road continued, steady, gentle, endless, and beneath the warmth of the growing day, Elias followed it forward. The morning sky stretched stood beside the open doorway for a little while longer. The elder remained nearby. Neither seemed eager to speak. The moment felt complete exactly as it was. Below them, the conservatory shimmered beneath the sunlight. Glass roofs sparkled. Streams wound through gardens. Silver trees swayed gently in the breeze. From this distance, everything appeared calm, as though the entire conservatory had settled into a quiet morning rest. Elias watched the landscape, and as he did, he noticed something unexpected. The lessons of the journey no longer felt like separate memories. They had become part of the view itself. The patience of the rain, the wisdom of the seasons, the comfort of familiar light, the beauty of unwritten days, the peace of unhurried time. Each lesson rested gently within him, not as instructions, not as rules, simply as understanding. The elder smiled softly. Some journeys stay with us. His voice blended with the breeze. Elias nodded. The old man looked toward the horizon. The best ones become part of how we see the world. Far below, sunlight moved slowly across the conservatory gardens. The flowers opened toward the day. Streams reflected silver ribbons of light. Everything continued exactly as it always had, and somehow that felt comforting. The world did not require constant attention. The flowers knew how to bloom. The rivers knew how to flow. The morning knew how to arrive. For a while, they remained beside the doorway, watching, listening, simply being present. Eventually, the elder placed a gentle hand upon the wooden frame. The rain will continue singing. He smiled. The gardens will continue growing. The breeze drifted through the grasses. The conservatory will continue welcoming travelers. His eyes reflected the morning light. And so will life. The words settled peacefully into the silence. Elias looked one final time across the landscape. The great glass domes, the distant gardens, the winding streams, the shining paths. Every corner seemed touched by quiet wonder, the sort of wonder that never demanded attention, only appreciation. At last, he turned toward the doorway. Warm golden light waited beyond, gentle, comforting, like the glow of a lantern seen through a welcoming window. The elder nodded. No farewell was needed, no grand speech, only a smile, only understanding. And so Elias stepped forward. The morning remained bright behind him. The doorway remained open. The horizon remained endless. The journey continued, as all journeys do, one day becoming another, one season becoming another, one story becoming another. And somewhere beyond the gardens, beyond the rain, beyond the morning sky, countless quiet quiet adventures waited patiently for their turn to begin. The conservatory remained behind, peaceful, beautiful, unhurried. Its streams continued flowing. Its flowers continued blooming. Its rain continued singing softly upon the glass. And as the morning light stretched across the waking world, everything settled into a calm and comfortable stillness, a stillness filled with gratitude, a stillness filled with wonder, a stillness filled with rest. And beneath that endless morning sky, the story gently came to a close, not with an ending, but with peace.